Cabin 13 Productions.
You just look so pale and pink, and
Yeah, I don't look great.
you haven't seen what Randy Rucker looks like. Let me tell you, my man is a stud, dude. My man had.
I'll grab some chalky milk for the Bearfax.
They do come out of brown cows.
And
So.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't know.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know. Like, I saw your pen fly across the room, and you're like,
He's
oh,
like,
okay,
okay,
Nancy.
Grandma.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like, let's
Just
get
sit
back
down.
to bed.
I'm such a loser, sweating God, I'm the worst.
Last week, we delved into the concept of the near-death experience, a term coined by a Raymond Moody, author of the book Life, Afterlife. He conducted numerous interviews with individuals who claimed to have returned from the brink of death with accounts of life continuing after their supposed demise. We provided technical information last week, but this week, we'll be sharing stories from various individuals who claim to have their own experiences of the afterlife. Are these stories true, or merely products of their own minds under extreme bodily stress? Find out on this week's episode of the Woodsmen Podcast.
Welcome back to the Woodsmen Podcast. We're your hosts, Joey Rucker,
And Brent Murphy.
and welcome back, chat. As we've said on every episode, another week, another nickel.
Always another nickel.
Always a little bit. We haven't made a single dime on this podcast yet, but another nickel indeed.
Also, no nickels either.
Yeah. Yep. For our audio listeners on various sites like Spotify, Apple Music, go follow us there. But for our
Apple
audio
Podcasts,
listeners,
but
we still are rocking the spoopy vibes this week, and we've decked ourselves out with a new little thing for ourselves.
see, season 3, episode 1, we were definitely wearing some alien sunglasses,
Mhm.
but right now on episode 2, we are rocking not only Shrek ears, but I am Batman. So
I am vengeance.
I am vengeance.
And
So I mean,
I
I'm
have
living out my dreams right now, buddy. I am saving Arkham City as we speak.
I have a funny feeling because I can't remember if we have one or like two more episodes of spooky vibes, or if it's three
It's either
after
2
this.
or 3, yeah.
But I feel like we're just gonna slowly and progressively throughout every episode get more and more costumed. And then for our final Halloween bash, we're just gonna be coming in like full Sasquatch
It's gonna
attire.
go from masks to just shirts to
Yeah,
just everything.
full
just
Viking like
everything.
armor and everything.
How'd you grow a beard so fast?
It's great.
Speaking of beards, you just trimmed down.
I trimmed down. Honestly, I have not been taking care of my beard well. Thank you for noticing.
Yeah, of course.
And so I've just been like, and it's been getting constantly itchy and stuff, and I've been just tearing apart my face.
Ugh.
And so like I needed to like kind of take it off, start fresh. Chat or Brent or Eric in the studio, if anyone knows how to properly care for a beard, please somebody tell me, because I want to do it better this time.
Yeah, you want to get some beard shampoo and or conditioner, probably both.
See, I am
A
at
boar's
the point where
hairbrush.
I don't know if that's a joke or not, because
I'm dead serious.
that's okay, because I've never once I've shampooed my beard, but just with like shampoo.
No, there's like actual beard shampoo, actual beard conditioner.
Interesting.
Like boar's hairbrush is supposed to like keep it like really healthy apparently, which is interesting. You didn't even know this. I shaved my beard off, so I mean, but it's cool.
Your
whatever.
beard off? What do you mean?
Yeah, I got no beard no more, bro.
What are you talking about?
It's full gone.
Oh, I mean, well, you still
I got
have the
I got a
goat.
little baby goat now, dude, and it's
Oh.
terrible.
I'm sorry, I did not notice.
That's cool. I'll just go kill myself. Whatever. I'll just go protect the streets of Gotham now.
Honestly, you should just remove the whole beard if you're gonna do that.
You're crazy.
Because if you're trying to protect the streets, they're gonna know you by your beard immediately.
You want to see
Secret
my
identity.
double chin as
Dog.
the Caped Crusader
Dude,
himself?
Do you understand how worried I was that I was going to have to go full bald in order to heal my face.
Stop.
I was literally at the point where I was like, man,
This is it.
I will, if they've roasted me on Woodsman before, this is going to be a nightmare.
Dude, so
But
chat,
no.
for anyone who hasn't heard the jokes, anytime Joey like clean shaves, he looks like
Looks like what? Looks like what?
he looks like Mr. Krabs in that episode where he's out of the shell.
I forgot you.
You just look so pale and pink and
Yeah, I don't look great. But no, so I'm going to try and take care of my beard a little better this time and grow it out back to its thicker length because I do like it like that.
I mean, if it makes you feel better, it looks nice.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. I don't think it's bad. I also like trimmed it and stuff. But aside from beards, chat doesn't want to hear us talk about my beard.
Maybe they do. Maybe they want a beard
A
cast.
beard episode?
No, just a beard cast.
A beard cast. That'll be the bear.
Coming exclusively to you on Patreon. Speaking of Patreon.
Speaking of Patreon, actual first real news of housekeeping this week. We are going to do our best, and I think as much as we hate doing this in the past, at least I'll do it. I'll put it on my name. I will promise, chat, that we will have a Patreon account by next episode. We promised for season 3 we were going to get the ball rolling, and we're already an episode in, which is, again, we haven't gotten that far, but I just want to get the ball rolling. So
I mean, you
think-
guys also have to remember, like, this is part 2 of technically the first episode of season 3.
Yeah.
So it's a little different. We didn't really do a lot as far as our outline or anything like that either. So I feel like this week was like a little
It was
nice
chiller.
break,
It was
you know?
chiller. But I also know how we work and how we've done it in the past. And
No, that's
if we
facts,
don't
that's
actually
facts.
do it, then we'll never do it. And then like we'll complain. And I'm so sick and tired of our wrap ups having that like outro clip of follow us on YouTube and Patreon. And it's like, that doesn't exist. But
No,
yeah,
we
so
got some things cooking.
hopefully by this week we'll have Patreon.
We have a semi, I guess, idea of what we're even going to do for Patreon now, which is pretty cool. I mean, before we just kept saying we were going to release on Patreon, and then we had absolutely
Well, I think that's
zero
why
ideas,
we
so-
want to get the ball rolling, is because we actually kind of have an idea of how we want to do it, how we want to structure it, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be chill.
It's going to be a little bit more
relaxing.
unhinged, you
but,
know?
yeah.
You guys are paying for some, I would say great quality, but I don't know
You're paying
yet.
for quality.
You're
for
paying
sure.
for quality for sure, but you know, if you want us a little bit looser than we've been, you know, and you want to hear an extra person on mic majority of the time now, we'll have like 3 people on there. It'll be nice. It'll be nice, you know.
So yeah, I definitely look forward to that. That's gonna be kind of the big topic for this week's housekeeping.
Yeah, definitely. Well, again, we'll introduce season 3, baby.
Season 3, baby.
Woo! So, you know, this is a second episode of season 3, technically the second part of the first episode. Pretty excited, honestly. I've been wanting to have a part 2 of something
Yeah.
for so long, and I'm just excited that it's like, you know, in the middle of spooky season where it's like, I'm not gonna lie, the stuff that I care about. So I'm pretty, you know, I'm pretty
Blushes
hyped.
in his Batman mask.
you know, you guys can see the blushes straight from the screen. So, and if you're just listening, then I'm sorry.
Then
but,
I'm blushing through my Batman mask.
and I'm blushing through my Batman mask. But no, dude, it's gonna be a good one. I'm excited to dive in and finally get into the stories. We only did like a few stories last week, but I'm excited to finally dive in and like have mainly this episode just be some really spooky, some nice little head scratchers, as one would call it, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah. But that's honestly all we have for housekeeping. It's pretty short, but you know, don't forget, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, stories that you would like to send in to the Woodsmen Podcast, you can do that at thewoodsmanpod@gmail.com.
We will answer promptly.
We will definitely answer promptly. Again, I check every day, and again, I still got no responses. So you know, it's quite a shame. But you know, let's get out of this housekeeping and let's dive into our
Back
main.
to the near-death experience.
Just maybe we'll like have a little A little bat like go through the screen or something. I don't know. We're not gonna have a bat go through the screen, but you know.
Look, here's a bat going through the screen.
Clink.
I am purposefully going to do the worst edit of a bat flying through
Please
ever.
do.
It's going to.
So I just thought we would dive into just a little brief overview before we kicked it off with some stories, you know.
Yeah.
So the near-death experience, the term originally coined by an author, Raymond Moody, author of Life After Life, and like a whole bunch of other books having to do with I would say like after death spirituality. I wouldn't say it's like directly like a spiritual, you know, say like Christian or like Islamic or anything like of a religious belief, but definitely spiritual for sure. He basically conducted a whole bunch of interviews with a whole bunch of people who had claimed that they themselves had near-death experiences, definitely some life-changing experiences. And they all range from, you know, a wide variety of beliefs, even atheism, which if anyone didn't know what atheism was, you know, it's just not believing in anything after death. So very fascinating to have some people who didn't believe in anything whatsoever happening, you know, once they died.
Yeah.
To come out with like, hey,
Raymond Moody actually did not look anything like I thought he would look like, because
Not at all.
For any of our YouTube watchers out there, if you saw, I think it was our introduction into the episode, we had a little clip there of Raymond Moody himself. He wasn't either what I thought he looked like or what I thought he sounded like. Have you heard what his voice sounds like?
Yeah, like he does not sound anything.
It's not a bad voice. It's very interesting.
He's just one of those, like, if you were ever listening to an audio-based podcast and then you saw their faces for the first time,
last thing you would think.
You're just like,
but at the same time,
Shrek?
From the
you know, like it's just one of those, like, really?
Yeah. But it was interesting though, pulling up some clips of him for that intro, because with the little clips that I did watch on my own making that, you could definitely tell he's super into this whole thing. Like he's very passionate about it, very like takes the whole thing seriously. It's very interesting.
Well, I would say like almost,
you know,
I mean, almost like a lot of his professional life, I think, really revolved around like trying to understand like what the near-death experience even was and stuff like that. Because like we had also mentioned in the first episode, his fascination really started with hearing another doctor's experience of having a near-death experience, where it was like, oh, this is like a scientific guy who also had one of these weird, like, spiritual, you know, like, awakenings or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he believed wholeheartedly in, like, what he saw and what he went through.
The doctor.
Yeah. So it's pretty insane. It is pretty insane. But moving on from that, you know, due to all of those, you know, interviews that he conducted with all these different people, he kind of found that there were around 9 different things that most people kind of experienced, you know, and
this part of the last episode, I don't know about chat, but to me personally, I thought was super interesting, because I didn't realize like just how many different types of like occurrences or like what could happen for people's different near-death experiences. You know, there's way more than I had. I mean, 9 is not a lot, but 9 is a lot of anything.
9 is definitely a lot of anything.
And I honestly, I was just shocked, because again, I think I mentioned it in the last episode, but previously I had only viewed the near-death experience as something where you just see your life flash before your eyes, like you sort of relive it on replay. But it's not always that. It's like, you know,
there's so many different things. I mean, like the tunnel view, going almost like an invisible elevator, like from Earth, you know, into space, into nothingness. Like I said, like a tunnel view, going towards the light, which I also find like a very interesting, like, because again, like Life After Life was like published in 1995, which like really in the grand scheme of things wasn't like a long time. You know, like it wasn't like a long time ago. It wasn't like, oh, like this book in the 1700s described this. You know, it's like 1995, and a lot of people had this tunnel view into the light. And I feel like most people, at least like maybe of a religious sense believe in that, like, oh, like, go towards the light, you know, like, go towards the light. You hear that all the time, especially with people who are like super into like ghost hunting and like all that kind of stuff. Movies after movies, you know, they always say like, oh, well, just head towards the light, you know. You
Yeah.
can make, and it's such a weird trope that I think none of us really realize is like such a big thing, but that's one of the 9 common experiences of having a near-death experience, which, you know, it almost leads you to believe like, man, maybe there's some truth, you know, to that
Yeah.
to that trope in general, you know, and all these movies that talk about it. So it is very interesting. But if you guys want, you know, more information having to do with those 9 experiences, we're not going to go into all of that right now.
But you can learn more about it in our last episode.
Exactly, the near-death experience. Part one. Yeah, you know, season 3, episode 1 of the Woodsmen
Shameless
Podcast.
plug
You know?
of an episode we did just last week.
And if you guys thought we were annoying with that in season 2, oh boy, we're
It's
gonna be
gonna
so annoying
get
in season
worse.
3.
Yeah, no, I definitely, please go check out that week's episode.
We worked hard. We
It was
worked hard
good,
on
yeah.
that one.
And I honestly think that it turned out really good. You can also get 2 very quick example stories, like what we're going to be doing here pretty soon. But in this episode, like we mentioned in the introduction, we're going to have a lot more in-depth stories to cover today and discuss about them.
Definitely.
Before we actually get there, though, I also kind of wanted to bring up this little topic because we're talking about stories today. And the stories are all in relation to near-death experiences. And so we had, on the first episode of season 2, a very special guest, which was my father. So for any long listeners or enthusiasts chat, you may remember my father being on the episode.
Hashtag fatherhood, season 2,
Hashtag
episode 1.
fatherhood. Told you, it's just going to get worse. Shameless plug. But my dad, for those of you who don't know, he has had plenty of times where he should have died, like many of them.
My man has lived.
Yeah, and he has literally beaten death more times than I can count. But there have been like bigger occurrences in the past where they've been like more serious than like other ones. And so I was curious about if he had any experience in a near-death experience. and so I asked him about it, and I thought it'd be interesting to kind of tell you guys, because I was actually not expecting his answer. But I also think that it lines up very well with who my dad is. So, like, basically, to preface, there were 2 like main stories in mind that I thought my dad definitely would have had a near-death experience for. One where he was a teenager, he was 17 years old, and he was driving up the mountains with his friends, or I think it was just a friend, and he got into a car accident. And in this car accident, I think he was the one driving, but the front of the car was crushed, and it basically smashed his leg. And after that, during a bunch of recovery and surgeries, and there's a long-winded story that I'm not going to go fully into, my dad lost his leg. My dad is a full pirate. Shameless plug, go watch the pirate episode.
A pirate's life for me.
Yeah,
That's
a pirate's
all I
life for
gotta
me.
say.
But yeah, so my dad currently wears a prosthetic leg, and that was like one of his most traumatic experiences of his entire life. And then along with that, there's
I would
another.
assume so.
Oh, yeah,
That's pretty heavy.
well, especially
That's
at
pretty
17.
heavy.
Can you imagine losing your leg at 17?
Still in high school, dude. Like, and wasn't he a football player as well?
Yeah, he was one of the biggest football players at his time. Like, my dad was the stud on campus, dude. He was like the
Bro,
man.
I've seen pictures. Bros, that, by the way, guys, if you aren't a visual listener and you haven't seen what Randy Rucker looks like, let me tell you, my man is a stud, dude. My man had full mullet with the mustache, and like, dude, I would have loved to be friends with him in high school.
Yeah.
He
was
a ladies' man. Bro.
I don't you know what's a funny thing I've actually said before in the past? I don't think my dad would be friends with me if I knew him when he was
Probably not, dude. I mean, probably both of us, man. There's no way.
But aside from that,
We played soccer.
yeah. My dad is so disappointed that I'm not into football.
No one came to our senior night, dude. Like,
It's so sad, but it's so true.
it's so true. Like, my man was like leagues above us, man. He was leagues above us.
Okay, before we just start
Sorry.
complimenting my dad for like an hour.
Shout out to Randy.
Shout out to Randy. No, so the other story, I'm trying not to make it too long, but the other story was when he was much older. I was young. My dad used to own a motorcycle, and he was driving out with his buddy, and I think they were also somewhat on a mountain road. And basically there was this one occurrence where they were driving, and there was a big boulder that had come into the road, and they didn't have a lot of time to clear the way, so they kind of had to swerve, and then both of them, my dad and his friend, they both crashed their motorcycles. Crazy experience. My dad broke 3 ribs, which, side note to the story, was hilarious for me because I just kept making him laugh during his recovery, which made him hurt so bad.
That's foul, bro.
It was
That's
best.
foul.
But all that said, so these are like 2 crazy stories, right? And I really thought my dad would have had a moment. Even like we talked with Eric on the last episode, how when you're in that moment of almost death, things can slow down.
Yeah,
to the point where
time slows. You begin thinking of like other things that are just not there in the realm of like what you're doing. Like,
or you see the light, or you see like the tunnel or something. And I'm thinking, man, my dad falling off of a motorcycle at high speeds. Like, can you imagine the rush or the adrenaline? And I asked him, I wanted to know, have you ever had a near-death experience? And he was like, no. And I was like,
cool.
What? And so this is sort of how he explains it. He explains it as he has always sort of just met life like up front the way it is, like a matter of fact kind of thing. And in both moments, well, unfortunately, with the car situation where he lost his leg, he actually has amnesia. I don't know if I've ever told you that.
That's crazy.
He remembers going to meet up with his friend, and then it's black until he's like in the hospital. Like no recollection of driving up the hill, no recollection of the crash, nothing. So pretty wild. But with the motorcycle, he remembers every single detail, and it's weird to me because he was saying that for him, nothing slowed down. There was never a moment of reflecting on his life. He just sort of, it all felt like it happened in the matter of seconds that it did. He crashed, he slid across the asphalt, he got right up and immediately walked to the side of the highway so that he wouldn't get hit by another car. And he was like checking himself, making sure he's still breathing and everything. And I don't know. I was really blown away from that because we talk about like little things like, or I mean, not to say that they're little, but like things like you hear a voice when you're a child during a near-death experience, as we talked about in the last episode, or like you're in a coma and then you wake up and you can tell where your dentures are. Very weird supernatural things, but when something is like an immediate adrenaline rushed threat to your life, you don't have anything. I just find it so weird. And he also kind of like, sorry to hog the mic, chat, but he also kind of correlates it a little bit to his faith as well, because he basically believes that, you know, death will have him when he's had him. Death is not really, he's not really going to worry about death until
like a memento mori, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you know, death is around like every corner, you know, so you just always got to be prepared to live life like it's your last.
Exactly.
You know?
My dad doesn't, I don't know if my dad fears anything. Truly. I mean, I'm not even just saying that. Just truly. So I don't know. I wanted to bring that up and see like what your take was, it since like you're very into this the near-death experience.
Yeah, no, I mean, it personally just sounds like it just wasn't near death for him, you know. To be honest,
but
like
that's what I've never
like
understood.
you know, like
about it,
yeah,
is...
he went through, but like you said, you know, yeah, he broke 3 ribs, but I mean, like as far as like flatlining under surgery, you know, like or going through something like crazy where it's, you know, because there are some stories where, you know, someone's pronounced dead for like 30 minutes and then they just come back and you're like, dog, what? Like, what the heck? You know? So, I don't know. Maybe his was just like, he knew he was going to survive. whatever higher power, anyone believes in knew that he was going to survive.
No,
and
you
maybe
bring up a good
that's-
point. I kept, even when I talked to him, I kept thinking, well, okay, even if you are truly foundational in your own belief that you're not afraid of death, you still fell off of a motorcycle at high speeds. You still crashed, but the way you said it also does sort of make me think about it differently in the fact that, oh, well, maybe he actually just genuinely wasn't going to die that day, which he didn't.
Yeah.
And so maybe if you're not near
some of
it,
those stories sound like it's like,
it's a
bro is 100% like this should have died, type
yeah.
of situation.
Trauma is different
so.
than near-death experience.
Yeah, because I mean, we got trauma, so it's
Yeah.
like,
What's that noise?
oh, okay. Yeah. No, but I mean, everyone's got their trauma. Everyone's got their own, stuff going on. So it is like it's a little different. I would say. I mean, not to downplay anything you went through, because I mean, bro's gone through some crazy stuff. But
I didn't want the story to come out like as lackluster because he didn't see it as a near-death experience.
I mean, it's still crazy though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still crazy. I mean, I couldn't imagine being 17 and like getting in a car accident, and then, because I believe, what was it, the car accident he got airlifted
It was
to
the
the hospital,
motorcycle.
or was it the motorcycle? Okay,
Motorcycle.
yeah. But I mean, to go through something like that, I mean, that's already traumatic in itself.
Yeah.
But it's like, imagine kind of almost having amnesia, like you said, and like having to tell his parents, like, we might need to just cut his foot off,
Yeah.
or like something like that. That's traumatic, but like for the doctor to know, like, if we do this, like, he's going to be in good hands, all this stuff.
True.
It's not like
No,
one
that's
of
a
those
good
like
point.
crazy ones where it's like, we don't know what's going to happen. Like, it's not like, having a weird flesh-eating bacteria or something like that, where it's
Yeah.
like kind of going to the doctor for a rash, and then like you get put under and you wake up and then you have no leg or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just such a different, I feel, experience. I mean, it doesn't downplay it; it's still crazy, but I think he was in good hands, and I think that like he kind of knew as well that like, hey, like, I'm gonna make it through. I mean, I've talked to your dad. Your dad is like strong man, dude. I
Yeah.
don't think he's ever gonna believe that, oh, this is it.
No.
He's gonna go out fighting
not
no
that kind of
matter
guy.
what. So it's just one of those, like, maybe it just wasn't his time,
Yeah.
and
No, I mean that's a good way to think
which
about
I would much rather have that than have a near-death experience, because that means you got to be on the brink, Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know.
No, I mean, well, I just wanted to bring that story just since we're talking about it and we're
Yeah,
going
no,
back into the
it's-
near-death experience. But that's also just sort of a really small example story, one of many that we're about to get into.
Yeah, because we got some doozies.
got
Let
some
me
good
tell
ones.
you, we got some crazy stories.
So
but
strap in, grab some milk. Let's get to our bear facts.
maybe
and then
even
we're
some
gonna,
chalky milk.
Some chalky milk. Grab some chalky milk for the bear facts.
They do come out of brown cows.
And-
So
Really?
yeah, you didn't know?
I didn't know. I didn't know that.
Chocolate cows.
Chocolate.
Yeah. But yeah, let's dive into some bear facts. It's not about the diddler this week, but it's definitely about, something unfortunately tragic.
Yeah.
Once again.
That's how it goes.
That's how the bear
I feel
facts
bad
goes.
for that news anchor. He's always having to look up really sad things.
I know, man. Joseph Bear Facts.
Joseph Bear.
FAX, not facts, not FAC.
His middle name's
TS.
Bear.
Joseph B. Facts.
Welcome back to another segment of the Bear Facts with the most unbearable news anchor around, Joey Rucker. And honestly, I've lost hope in Bear Facts. I have lost hope in there being just some kind of nice story to tell you guys. We've talked about, potential murder crimes. We've talked about the loss of the great James Earl Jones. We've talked about the diddler. And now it's just tragedy after tragedy. And in all due respect and all seriousness, on the last week of September, there was a devastating hurricane that hit the East Coast called Hurricane Helene, or Helen. I actually don't know. Is it Helen? I'm getting word that it's Helen from our guys in there. But Yeah, so it hit the East Coast and it actually hit the mainland at peak intensity in Big Bend, Florida, with at winds hitting the peak speeds of 140 miles per hour. Quite insane. And it's not just Florida that's been hit. It's been all of like a whole bunch of areas on the East Coast and even other places too, not just affected by, the United States. But it's caused extreme destructive flooding and literally billions of dollars in damage to Florida alone. That's not even including the other states that have been infected or other regions. Florida alone has hit billions, in the 20s of billions of dollars in damage from this insane hurricane. And so from us here at the Woodsmen and from me and the Bearfax, our hearts go out to you, all the families who have been affected or any of those lives lost. And we hope you're doing okay. And we'll continue to think of you and do our best to keep you in our thoughts. But yeah, unfortunately, I wish I could make it all happy at the end with like a cupcake and a smile. But that's the Bearfax for you. Let's get back to our regularly scheduled program.
Often people relay their near-death experiences as a review of their lives. Though life review experiences cannot be deemed scientifically vertical, they are worth noting. They can have a profound effect on a near-death experiencers and sometimes cause them to re-examine their life and their morals. Below is a doctor's description of the life review of a near-death experience patient. When he realized that the collision was imminent, the patient said that time seemed to slow down as he hit the brakes and went into an uncontrolled slide. Then, he seemed to pop out of his body. While in this state, he had a life review, which consisted of brief picture flashes of his life. His car struck the truck, and the truck bed crashed through the window, causing multiple injuries to his head and his chest. Medical reports even showed that he was in a coma and nearly died. Yet, he had a vivid sensation of leaving his physical body and entering into darkness. He had the feeling of moving up through a dark tunnel toward a point of light, and suddenly, a being filled with love and light, he described, appeared to him. Now, he had a second life review, or life review proper, as one guided him by the being of light. He felt bathed in love and compassion as he reviewed the moral choices he had made in his lifetime. He suddenly understood that he was an important part of the universe and that his life had a purpose. So this one was pretty, I would say, hard-hitting. I would definitely say going through definitely what seems like, a pretty fatal car crash. I mean, enough to put you in a coma and like have medical, professionals like tell you, bro almost died. It's
Well, it's kind of the difference, between like how we talked about my dad's crash and this one in particular. It's kind of what you were saying before we started doing these stories. My dad had the crash and he did have something very traumatic happen, but he wasn't necessarily on the brink of death. This one is a much different situation.
yeah.
You know,
Definitely a different scenario for sure. And like I even found it like a little interesting that it said like a second life review. Like he not only had like the one initial, but like he also went through another where he was guided by another being,
Yeah.
like an afterlife being, and that he had some common tropes that we also saw, where it was like I was bathed in love and compassion. I realized that my story was just one part of like a bigger story,
and it kind
and
of gave him purpose in a
yeah,
way.
exactly, and that he came out of it just with a sense of like, okay, like, you know, there's more than these little problems, that I've been facing in life, that I'm like so much bigger than like
Yeah.
those issues,
It
and like
gave him clarity in a way, a clarity that that you're not just going to find by living your life normally and not having any big change. Like, no one's going to have something and like, well, I wouldn't wish a near death experience on anybody, but it's interesting that something like this is usually what really sets off this kind of change in people.
Yeah, and it's almost like what is that? Like what is you can a lot of people almost go through life and they go through their whole lifetime in general just kind of going through the motions like okay, another, like we say, like another day, another nickel,
Mm-hmm.
it's time to get up, pick ourselves up, get ready, get dressed, go to work for 8 hours, come home, semi relax, if you're not doing anything else besides working, then go to bed and you repeat the whole process over again. But
Yeah.
like, why does it have to come down to like you dying, essentially for you to like wake up and realize like, "Damn, there's a lot more going on than just,
Well, maybe because there's something to that. Maybe when you're dead, whatever it is, you're closer to enlightenment. And I don't just mean necessarily in the Christian aspect, I just mean enlightenment in general.
yeah,
Maybe whatever enlightenment is, when you are on the brink of like your lights shutting out for the last time, like maybe you're just that close to whatever it is, the meaning of it
yeah.
all,
I mean, it's like the only thing I could really think of because it's just, we had also talked about in the last, the previous episode that a lot of people who are experience like NDEs have majority of the time like a positive experience. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really matter like what they're doing, like what they're going through, who they are, what religion they're a part of. Like most people like really experience, this trope, like a feeling of whether or not they're directed by a being that feels that way, but like just themselves, like I feel love and compassion kind of like surrounding me like a blanket, like I feel like there's so much more than like what I was doing in this lifetime that had so much more meaning as to like
It's not what you would expect to hear from someone in that who's had a near death. It's not like what you're who's someone who's never looked into it or researched it. It's not what like is the common trope of someone who's about to die or has died. When people often think of death, they often think of like the end, and that often makes people just sad. It makes
yeah.
people hurt or burdened, and nobody really views it as kind of like you said earlier, memento mori, looking back and that kind of thing.
Like knowing that it's always gonna be there. So it's
Yeah.
like how do you live your days like on this earth doing the most that you can that has meaning, like whether it's, maybe feeding the homeless or uh being all for nature and like the things that are around you and trying to progress life, but it's like just being present in the moment. That's not all about work. It's not, your
Hmm.
success is not weighed in like the things that you can physically and tangibly like show for yourself, but it's like there's so much more to it than that. And I kind of like where you were going with that just in general, where it's like we sometimes think of death as like the end, but really it's almost like just taking a whole other step into a whole other journey, and it almost like reminded me a little bit of like the Lord of the Rings, like I know it sounds like crazy, but like you think of like the ending, at least like the movies, like the Peter Jackson movies,
Hmm.
and you have Frodo and Bilbo, they end up going onto the shores of I can't even remember the name, but they end up. Sorry, chat. We just had a crazy
Yeah,
crazy
chat.
firework just now, but that was wild. No, but you have them go off onto the shores to another land. It almost like insinuates like in the movies that like they're dying, but really if you read the books, like it's not. They just like go off to a
Hmm.
whole other place that's not where they're at, and they have these whole other adventures, and they live out their lives in this place. But that's almost like kind of the same theme. Like you don't really know what's happening after your death here. And it's like, who's to say it's not really a death, but it's just another part of your journey, through your existence. Like it's not physical anymore, but it's like there's more to it.
Yeah.
and that almost kind of gives me that same vibe of like, you're going through a tunnel, you're hitting light, you have these people directing you towards like, hey, you're bigger than all of this, what you're going through, and like you can choose, like we were talking about last episode, you can choose to go to the light, or sometimes not your time, and you got to come back and you got to fulfill some other things going on down here. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy.
Some near-death experiencers report stories of vertical out-of-body experiences, including traveling through walls to the waiting room where they see their relatives and friends. One patient reported traveling through a wall and seeing her young daughter wearing mismatched plaids, which was highly unusual. Another woman traveled through a wall and overheard her brother-in-law in the hospital waiting room talking to a business associate in a very derogatory manner. She was able to report this back to him later. So, this particular near-death experiences, would you relate this a lot more to like the Doctor Strange kind of thing, where like you're literally
like the out of body experience.
you're like coming out of your body, you're floating around, you're noticing things that like you shouldn't be able to since your body's over in one place.
Yeah, I feel like this one really is more of an out of body experience, but again, that's like there's so many stories where that happens, So I find it, well, even last week, I think it was your story specifically, was someone recounting like, hey, my dentures are over there, and they're like, how do you know that? And you're like, well,
Yeah.
because I just saw my body, like, so
It's really weird. I think the thing that's weird is that they're also traveling through wall. Like they're not just seeing stuff around them.
they're
Seeing,
traveling through physical
Yeah.
like objects, which I find like very strange. Um, and this one also like has seen a loved one, which is also interesting. But this one seems to be someone that they actually like knew, obviously like their daughter. It wasn't like seeing great grandparents that they never met or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. Like this is like someone that is physically
And
there.
also hearing like the brother-in-law. That was another woman actually, but this story in particular seems to play into mostly, like you said, familial types,
Yeah.
relatives and friends, which is pretty interesting. Someone you have a bond with.
Yeah.
But
Which I don't know. See, I would be very interested to ask if the daughter was dead, or
Oh,
if
that's true,
like
yeah.
it was like their daughter was alive, but they're seeing their daughter, coming to them, because there are some experiences where people see people who are still alive
Yeah.
and like well, and you're kind of like, that's weird. Like they're talking to me, but like I'm definitely like not in my own body, which I find like very strange.
Mhm.
So I would be curious to see if there was any way to kind of figure that out, because I know that there are a lot of like experiences that kind of work like that. So
Did you get these stories from like one source in particular or many sources?
yeah, so some of them I got from different sources. As far as the ones that we had read last week and the ones that we've read right now, they're all from one website. Cannot remember the name off the top of my head right now. I should have like, put that in there, but I said it last week.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's like a website that really dives deep into just like the near death experience in general, and it's a very like scientific website where you can kind of get like all these stories of like people that they've like compiled like all of this data together. They're obviously like abbreviated because a lot of these have like come from like other books and stuff like that, but all pertain to the near death experience in general. So I'm sure like maybe if you could possibly, get in contact with someone like there, maybe you could, ask them like, hey,
Get some
like
more
where
info.
did you get this story from?
Yeah.
If it's like maybe from a book, then maybe you can like get in contact with an author or something like that. But
Well, I
yeah.
think part of why I like this one a lot is just because when I think of near death experiences, seeing the light or seeing your life flash, that seems to be like a more common occurrence, but having your body float out of you, like your soul or something,
Yeah.
and just floating around and seeing things you should not be able to see, that is just like something supernatural. And as we have talked many times on this podcast, we just that stuff gets us, gets our blood tingling.
It gets in your bones, man.
Yeah.
Like it's strange too, because like when you think of something like that, there are a lot of people who talk about like, astral projecting and all that kind of stuff, where it's like that's something that's like learned.
Yeah.
So then it almost begs the question, like, are these people like, when they do learn to astral project, are their souls leaving their body? Like, is there another form of yourself that's not physical that
we should do a deep dive? We should do like maybe not a whole episode, but maybe depending on the topic,
maybe like an out of body experience episode, no, dude, I would love to do something like that. I just find the topic so interesting because there are so many people that talk about like being able to just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like when it comes to near-death experiences, it's like, well, that just sounds a lot like astral projecting. It sounds a lot like just leaving your body. And like, there's some cases where they talk about even like there being a tether, to you. And it's like, if you go too far, like, the tether breaks, you can't get back, And so something like that also leads me to believe like maybe there's something more to that we don't really understand, as far as like maybe it's a soul thing, or like whatever makes you, like your consciousness,
your essence.
Yeah, the essence of you, like you being vengeance,
Yeah, I am vengeance. I am vengeance.
I'm vengeance.
I am the Australian vengeance, in case you didn't know. And this is where we'll wrap up and talk to our next story.
Talk to our next story.
Yeah, someone will talk to it. They'll read it, and that. Listen, I didn't go to school. I was too busy saving the neighborhood from criminals.
I don't even know how to read.
I don't.
As mentioned above, some blind people report being able to see during their near-death experience. Psychiatrist Brian Weiss tells the story of a blind, elderly woman, and it goes like this. She suffered a cardiac arrest during her stay in the hospital, where I was the chairman of the psychiatry department. She was unconscious as the resuscitation team tried to revive her. According to her later report, she floated out of her body and stood near a window, watching the resuscitation being done on her. She observed without any pain whatsoever as they pumped her chest and pumped air into her lungs. During the resuscitation, a pen happened to fall out of her doctor's pocket and rolled near the same window where her out-of-body spirit was standing and watching. The doctor eventually walked over, picked up the pen, and put it back in his pocket. He then rejoined the frantic effort to save her, and, to their success, they succeeded. A few days later, she told the doctor that she had observed the resuscitation team at work during her cardiac arrest. No, he soothingly assured her. You were probably just hallucinating because of the anoxia, which means the lack of oxygen to the brain. And this can happen when your heart stops beating. She then said, but I saw your pen roll over to the window. Then she described the pen and other details of her resuscitation itself. The doctor was shocked. His patient had not only been comatose during the resuscitation, but she had also been blind for many years. So what do you think about that?
Dude, listening to this one, I was honestly blown away, because it's like I knew from the title that she was blind, but that moment at the end where like the doctor is shocked, it like immediately made me shocked again too, because I was like, oh my god, wait, no, she's blind,
right?
How is she seeing the pen?
Dude, I completely forgot it was a story about her being blind.
Same.
Literally, I mean, it took a lot of takes to get here, but let me tell you, like I completely forgot. I mean, I low-key got immersed in the story because it's like the fact that it's like, okay, she's comatose. She is being resuscitated. Like, if she was not being resuscitated, she would have died. Like, easy.
Mm-hmm.
A pen falls out of the doctor's pocket. I mean, this is like a whole, like, this is a story, bro. This is like a whole story. Like, she is She's looking at this pen. She's by the window. The pen rolls to the window. The doctor picks up the pen. They keep resuscitating her. They succeed in the resuscitation.
Yeah.
And then it said in the story, like, a few days later, like, she mentioned this. So this wasn't, like, like, right after. And you're like, oh, okay, cool.
I
cool,
wonder
cool,
if,
cool,
because
you
then
know?
that would have to mean, right, that the doctor remembers the pen falling
Yeah.
and rolling away. Because,
Right?
like, otherwise, why would he be shocked? Like, why would he?
Right,
Because it would be one
right.
thing for, like, this crazy blind woman to be like, I saw your pen fly across the room. And you're
And
like,
he's
oh,
like,
okay,
okay,
Nancy.
grandma.
Yeah.
Like, like, let's
Just
get
sit
back
down.
to bed.
I got 2 points, which
Okay.
you brought it up. It kind of made me think, why would the doctor worry about his pen when you got this woman
Right,
on the,
I was
on
thinking the same
bed
thing, like, there are
trying
more
to be
pressing matters,
Right.
sir.
And he, like, my mind's thinking, he's like, oh, my pen. And then behind him is this frantic scene of a team working on this
Yeah.
woman trying to resuscitate her,
You're
right?
just hearing the flat
And
line in
Right.
the background.
secretly,
but,
unbeknownst to us,
Right.
also the old lady's ghost.
Right.
Just-
is watching
is watching
all
this man. Like, I would, first of all, I'd be like, you need to take some money off my bill.
Right,
That would be
'cause,
my first thought. I'd be like, man, your hands are unsanitary
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
operating
yeah.
on me right now.
I got all
You're-
these other RNs
Yeah.
trying to bring me back to life, and you're like, oh, my pen.
my pen. Like, damn, dude, that must have been like a 0.7 felt pen or something.
gotta
dude.
be.
Like, it had
It's
to
like
have
10
been-
grand.
Yeah, like, it had to have been one of those pens like, oh, dude, like, it's my favorite pen. Like,
Yeah.
not a ballpoint pen or something. Like, not a
Right.
big
And then
pen.
the
Like, that's
second point
crazy.
was what we were saying is completely forgetting she was blind. I think what it was is just because we're seeing it from her perspective.
Like,
being
there's so
told,
much going on. There's
and
so
there's
much
so
going
much
on.
detail coming from her. This is her report. So you're like, man, she's like just seeing everything.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, the doctor's like, but you're blind. It brings you, oh,
You're like,
what I'm
"You're
curious
right."
about is that like she's still clinically blind now. Or I guess
That's what
now
I'm
in
getting.
relation to the
yeah.
story, right?
That's what I'm getting.
like after being resuscitated.
yeah,
resuscitated.
Yeah.
resuscitated.
Yeah.
After being resuscitated,
Close,
she's
Batman.
still blind, right?
Well, yeah, 'cause the
because
doctor-
that would also be another reason why it could be such a crazy
Right.
thing.
Because that's
It's-
why he was kind of shocked. He's like, how? You're
Dude,
blind.
How do you see when your eyes are closed?
Like, dude, it's just so, like, in being comatose, like, too, like, if you're someone who doesn't believe in like any of
Can
this
someone
stuff going
remind me
on,
what
like,
comatose means?
so you're in a
Which one?
coma.
Yeah.
You're just
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's
like,
what I thought, but I didn't want to like
Yeah.
assume that and then be
Just-
wrong and then say something really
Just
stupid.
think of it as a deep sleep. Your brain is
Gotcha.
just
just
on
done. Brain
bystand.
inactive.
Yeah.
Right,
Just
yeah.
gone.
No,
You're having
that's a
some pretty
wild
crazy
story.
dreams or
That's,
something.
that's so far probably my favorite story
And-
we've covered.
An out of body experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
another out of body experience where she's literally seeing
Mm-hmm.
all the things going on. Even if she wasn't blind, she's out here like in a coma, getting raised up from her body and seeing everything going on around her. Like that, like what?
However, there was, at least from here, no report of like a tunnel or
Right,
light.
right.
Or,
True,
or
true.
the warmth and sensation.
Yeah, like that. She was just there. She was just
Yeah.
observing what was happening, and then that, like, again, it leads you to believe, like, are there levels to it depending on how, like, quote unquote
How
dead,
dead
you
you
are?
are.
You know, like, are there levels to
Maybe,
this? Is
maybe.
there
Or-
like a time limit? Is there like
or it could be something like it's just wasn't her time to die. So
Yeah.
there's no need for like, hey, exit
Yeah.
stage right.
you're gonna get a little bit. You're gonna get a
Yeah.
little bit of some weird, but you're not gonna get
Yeah,
all.
you're
of it,
good.
You know? Like,
there's
yeah.
no tunnel. There's no hole opening underneath you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and then I would be curious then to know, like, was it when they brought her back? Did she just shoot back in her body, or was it like
More so,
did she
you
have
know
to
what we got to
choose
think
to get
about?
back in her body?
How pissed would she have been when she wakes up blind again?
right?
That's a
like
great
she's
point.
like
Oh
she's
my
like
gosh,
blind
I
out
saw
from
your pen fly
Deadpool,
across
like,
the room. I saw it roll across the floor. Well, how can you, Miss Nancy? You're blind.
And she's like, yeah, don't remind me,
Right.
asshole. Like, you know, like,
or was she okay? Was she blind from the very beginning?
I don't know.
I don't know.
This is one of those
Yeah.
things where I wish we could.
like
have
was
a
she
little bit
born
more
blind? Was this the
detailed-
first time she ever saw anything?
Dude,
Like-
that'd be wild.
Like that would be crazy. Like, how's she know what a pen looks like? Which
She's
would lead me to believe
so
she
many-
probably wasn't born
probably
blind.
not.
like,
now
you
we're
know?
just creating more questions than
Yeah,
answers.
yeah.
See, this is why I love these topics, dog. Like, there you get so many questions that you don't get answers to. Like, it's crazy.
It's pretty wild.
Well, I
dude.
mean, hey, talking about a crazy one. This next one, I will tell you because
Is it a good one?
from looking at the outline right now, this one's probably my favorite. This
Okay.
one's probably my
All right.
favorite out of all of them. So I'll
Well,
have you
let's-
read that one, buddy.
Oh, nice. Let's do
I
it.
feel like I was really hoping you were gonna read it.
12 years ago, I was in a coma for nearly a week. My doctor at the time insisted that I was brain dead and urged my mother and my sister to let me go so they could harvest my organs. My mother, who was a nurse, believed I was still in there, somewhere, due to the activity and the reacting to music and familiar voices from the people that I was closest to. After getting a second and third opinion, she nearly gave up hope. I woke up a week later with only one memory from the whole experience. On a loop, I remember being in a warm and safe place where time did not seem to exist. During all this, while I was in a coma, I had an enormous sense of peace and also some immense relief to be free of all of the emotional, mental, and physical pain that comes with being alive in this world. And one other person, my grandmother, who had died when I was 11, 10 years before I was hospitalized. Her voice and face is all I remember. My mind is fuzzy when trying to remember it all, but she begged me to choose life. She said I wasn't supposed to be there, that it wasn't my time yet, and that my mother was waiting for me, and I needed to get back to her. All the while, she begged me to live. This all happened on a loop. 10 months later, I was in a bar and a lady asked a friend of mine for a lighter. She then turned her attention to me and said, "You're only alive right now because your granny gave you a kick up the ass." It turned out the lady was a psychic. I had never met this woman in my life, and the only other person who knew that story was my mother. Whether or not you believe in any of that, you have to admit it's so weird that a complete and total stranger knew about my memories of my grandmother and her role in bringing me back to the land of the living.
That by far definitely has to be my favorite one out of the list.
That's a pretty crazy one. I wasn't expecting it. I was not expecting it because I thought I was blown away by the story of the blind woman and the fact that, well, she was blind. But I thought it was pretty interesting how, like, she had all these visions and what would you call it? Like, messages from her grandmother?
I would say, like, out of all of them, this is probably like the most near-death experience. Like, I think it checked off a lot of the boxes. You
Kind
know,
of tapping a little bit into the other side. Just
yeah,
you know.
especially with her, because she described the feelings of peace, no time, all this, like just being okay with everything, all that burden of like life and like being here on Earth, like just was not weighing her down anymore. She saw a loved one, dead relative.
Yeah.
She was just in a completely different place in general, which I find like very like that's to me, if you're like in a whole completely different place, I feel like that's how you know you're pretty close. You
Yeah.
got to be pretty close to death, or you are dead, or
And
like,
there's also the vibe of that it wasn't her time yet, and it kind of had to let her know
Right.
that.
like definitely like you can continue to go down this path, but like there's still so much.
Your
for you
mom
to
is
do.
waiting for you. Like,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
line right there is like what I find crazy is like whatever her grandmother was, whether it's a figment of her imagination, whether it's a near-death experience manifestation, whatever the grandma was, it literally is like, listen, your mom is waiting for you on the other side. It is
Yeah.
not your time yet.
Like
That-
taking
that's
real world
wild.
stuff, like taking
Yeah.
real world stuff that's like she would gravitate towards, having pull her back,
Mhm.
because like she said, it was a feeling of no time, like time ceased to exist. Like, so it is interesting knowing that like if time is such a man-made, construct, us, coming up with time, that it was something that knew like in that present moment that like, hey, you need to come back, you know, that there is someone there is something waiting for you, there is a person waiting for you, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and you know what the crazy part that we haven't even discussed yet is the psychic.
Yes.
Like, that's also crazy.
Someone that she does not know says something that completely resonates with her on like an emotional and a personal level, on something that like no
you
one
wouldn't
else
still
knew
be
besides
here
one other person.
If it weren't for your grandma kicking you back up into this, you know?
Yeah, like it's so, dude, it's wild. This is why it's my favorite. This is definitely like my favorite one out of all of them. It even almost touched on that, like the reluctance to leave as well. Like it touched on the like, well, I mean, I feel no earthly burdens here, you know, like I like it here. I like where I'm at, you know. There was like, you know, it took her grandmother saying like, you know, your mom needs you.
Yeah.
You know, for her to be like, okay, I guess I'll, you know, go back. So it's interesting that, like I said, it touched on quite a bit of the 9 main, I guess not rules, because I think a lot of these people haven't experienced all of them at one time, but the 9 basic tropes of like having a near-death experience. She touched on quite a lot of them. I would say at least like maybe 4 or 5 of them.
Oh, definitely
Easy.
more than some of the other ones have been.
Yeah, because a
having
lot of
one
them have been really
experience.
like out of body experiences and astral projection type of thing. But this one really touched on I definitely think she was either on the brink of death or she was definitely dead at one point and was able to pull back through.
I would agree.
I would love to know more. I would love to know
Yeah.
more about like what actually was like happening, you know.
I do question though, because the doctor was like for sure saying she was brain dead, and you know, obviously with being brain dead, there's no like that person who is brain dead is no longer there if you think about it, because that's who we are. Our brain is who we are. But the fact that she was still, as it was saying, she was still reactive to music and probably other stimulus things that they were trying to do, because the mom was a nurse.
That's true.
So that kind of means the doctor was wrong at the beginning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it still is unusual, because coma patients, which we commonly hear from stories, they're almost living a dream, because they're not waking up. This dream is happening, and then eventually they realize they're stuck in their body or whatever it might be. You know, obviously different scenarios. But in her case, she was what I call it a void in some manner, because there was no description. She just said a warm place. But
what is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like what
is it like a cloud, just a room of clouds and warmth?
Yeah.
You know?
Like what's the what's the physical settings around that, you know?
Yeah.
But
if there is any.
And I also like you said, almost like a dream state too. It was interesting how she said like it's played on a loop, you know, and a lot of the common thing, you know, like with dreams and nightmares in season 2, we had touched on the fact that a lot of, you know, dreams are reoccurring 15-second blips of like one thing, and like the reason why you can remember it is because it played more than like other dreams have, and that's why you can remember it better and stuff. But I wouldn't go as far as to say that this was a dream. I think
No.
like I think it was too real. I also think like, especially like you said, Joey, like the psychic part, I mean that in of itself, you don't have to believe in psychics. You don't have to believe in any of that kind of stuff. But if someone comes up to you and says some stuff like that, if this story's true, because again, you know, like anyone can just make something up as a good story. I mean, it's a great story.
Yeah.
You know,
But-
regardless if it's true or not, but it's like, you know, if it is, it's like, how do you explain someone being able to come up to you that you've never met?
A random stranger.
A random
Yeah.
person. It's not like a friend or something that came up and
Yeah,
said
no,
this. This
it's-
is a random person in a bar.
Yeah.
It's
You know?
definitely there's definitely something to that. Maybe we should have an episode about psychics, or that
Dude, that
how
would
they do
go
that.
on.
That'd be
Oh
interesting.
man, that would be a long
But
episode.
like, there's definitely something there, because
Yeah.
something that you're tapping into, whether it can't just be like intuition, because like I mean, man,
Especially being that specific too. I mean, it's like your Grammy's the only one.
it's different than like
She's
a
the only
fortune
reason
cookie,
you're here. Like
I had a fortune cookie today from what is it? I almost said Kung Fu Panda, but that's not
Panda
it. It's Panda
Express?
Express. I had one from there. You know what my fortune was? Take care of your family and friends. That's my fortune.
That's
very
a
generic.
warning.
That's a
from
warning.
fortune
That's an
cookie.
order.
that's a command. Yeah, I was like, that's
so
a command
it's
by
like,
whoever made that cookie, dog.
when you have something like that where you're like, oh, these are supposed to be like my future, that obviously bull.
yeah.
Then you have someone like this where they've mentioned something that is so specific to you, so like undeniable. That is when it becomes very strange and very crazy. You know?
Well, and how long did she say? Because she said that there was a time frame.
It
that
said a
there's-
week.
A week, yeah. So
she
that's
woke up
not
a week
even,
later.
But like, what was the time frame she was in that bar? Does it say when? Because I, for some reason, thought she had mentioned something like that, like, oh yeah, like this period of time later.
10 months later.
10 months later, almost a year after this experience.
And
which,
even though that's
to
not
be honest,
that
she
long,
probably
that's long enough
would've-
for you to not even think about it
Yeah,
anymore.
she's out here living normal life.
Yeah.
She's out of the hospital. She's fine. She's doing her own, human thing. She's obviously going to the bars. She's feeling good. It's not like she's like still like in a bed or anything like that. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, dude, what? Like, that's crazy.
Honestly,
like that,
the
like,
real
that is
hero-
crazy.
And the one thing too, there is I don't know if it was intentional or not, but there was no reasoning why she was in a coma in the beginning, because she
Right.
was only in a coma for a week. So
Yeah.
what caused that? Was
Well,
it,
she had been in the hospital and a doctor had dropped his pen and she tripped.
Different story.
Oh, my bad.
But I do wonder though if the reasoning why she ended up in a coma maybe had some effect to her.
Maybe.
Yeah, like is what puts you in that state? Does that have something to do with like the kind of experience you
Right.
get or something? But then, like we were talking about last week as well, like I mean, there are not NDEs, but they're the other experiences where people literally they don't go through anything.
Mhm.
Where, there's shared death experiences. People are like bedside with someone where they also have some weird, things happen. There's some where it's like you're almost in a car accident, but then you have this whole awakening experience and everything. And those are people who aren't physically going through anything. So then it's like, what is that? And I think we
Yeah.
kind of joked about it too. It's like, dang, did your soul just kind of like eject like on accident? It's like, oh, we're getting too close. We
Whoops.
got to get out, like,
Yeah.
and then they realize like, oh no, they're good. they go back in the body, is it like, it sounds crazy, but then when you hear some of these stories, you, especially the astral projection part of a lot of these stories, it's like, is there something to that? Is there something to where your other form of being, your other self, your other consciousness, whatever it may be, is that like more controlling over like the physical aspects of you? Like, is there something involving that? Like, do you even need to go through some crazy physical traumatic experience to have something like this, or is this just like,
Well, that's the question. That's like what we were questioning earlier is like, do you have to be on the brink of death to experience something so phenomenally life-changing,
Yeah.
to change your entire point of view on your life and make you live your day-to-day differently? And do you have to be on the brink of seeing the grim?
they're big grim?
Well, judging by all these stories, it seems that you have to be.
Seems like a lot
Yeah,
of these
because
stories
we
are
have yet
pretty-
to hit a story to I was sitting
I was
you know,
eating
on
a
my
peanut
couch,
butter and jelly sandwich the
and-
other day.
And I got some fat heartburn.
and all of a sudden,
When
my
this-
dead grandma that was dead 12 years ago told me, it's not your time.
It's like, why are you eating so much peanut butter? Like,
That's a lot of jelly.
like you went through a whole jug or a whole jar of peanut butter, dog. Like, what?
This wouldn't have happened if you watched your calories, Tom.
How many calories have you consumed in this one meal? How many? Three?
A lot.
3,000? 3,000?
It's not a joke. A lot.
You get out of this, bro. You need to get out of this mess.
But this story definitely was probably the best.
This is best one hands down we have. I mean, we have one more story. We have one more story that I will take over here, but I think that this one was also from Core as well. So I hope you guys like this one. I like this one as well. This one's probably a pretty good one to close out with. And then we'll get into our discussions and like how we're feeling about all this. On August 30th, 2017, my friend Justin died. He was shot while sleeping by his own father, who then ended his own life. A month later, I had overdosed on heroin and died, and I was brought back by Narcan. But while I was out, I was in this all-white space. My friend Justin was there. Stupidly, the first thing I had asked him was if he knew his father had killed him, and he unfortunately said yes. I'll be honest, the conversation we had left me a while ago, and I don't really remember a lot of what was said. But he then said it was time for me to go, and I went through a black tunnel, the white getting smaller and smaller. I woke in the ambulance with paramedics all around me. I considered myself so lucky to have this experience because it's different actually experiencing it, rather than just being told a story about it. I wish I could say I got clean right then and there, but unfortunately it took me another year. I was depressed for a while after that, because the feeling I had felt while I was there was so beautiful. I can't even describe it, and to be plummeted back into the living was pretty much torture. I lost a baby last week, and part of what gives me my peace is knowing that my baby went to that place and is being watched over by Justin and the others that I have lost along the way. I have a reason to be at peace when death finally comes.
This was a different vibe for a story.
This is a different vibe.
This is a very, like, the other ones had me very, like, curious and wondering, and I do feel that for this, but this story, like, I don't know, there's a more eeriness to it, at least for me. I don't know if it's like the same for you guys, but to me, the first thing I notice, obviously, are some of the similarities in what we've talked about when it comes to the near-death experience. Like,
you got a little bit more of the white light.
Yeah,
in the
white
tunnel.
light, seeing the tunnel,
The warmth.
Yeah.
But I also find it strange that, like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not getting it. Maybe, like, because I guess she felt the warmth. I guess she felt at peace here. But it just felt like being able to talk to someone about how their father had killed them and them knowing about it just felt like a sad place, at least on its surface. And so to lose a child later on in life and then be happy that that child will make it to this supposed whatever this place is. I don't know. It left me like kind of confused, I guess. It's a different vibe for me on this one. I have to admit, it's interesting.
I think it's a little bit more confusing because, unfortunately, with a story like this, I would have loved to get more information on like the actual conversation that like what she had. Like she said, she had like she forgot, essentially, like really like all that was said. And I mean, like, not to say it's like not real or anything like that, but I think maybe she like took away the key parts that like she needed maybe like in that moment. I mean, you gotta imagine like losing a friend in such an abrupt like way like that, as far as like a murder suicide type of thing. I mean, that's already hard in itself.
That's why I feel strange about it. It feels like there's a piece of the puzzle missing.
Yeah,
it really does.
I think if maybe we had more information as far as like, but don't worry, it's great here. Like, like something that like wasn't like such a sad start off.
Yeah, my father killed me, but did you know the void has a vending machine?
Yeah,
everything's
like
free.
I just would have loved to have a little bit more of that story.
Yeah,
but I won't lie. The reason why I picked this one was because it wasn't it wasn't such a happy-go-lucky thing, and we got reasoning on like what happened before, more than just like, okay, we're gonna
That's
dive
true.
straight
That's a
into
good
this
point.
experience. Like,
Yeah.
we know, like, hey, she
We know
lost
why
her
she
friend.
died.
We know that, you know, unfortunately, like she was a heroin addict, you know, someone who overdosed on drugs. Like we've know the reasons as to why, like
That's
she, you know, like passed, you know, quote unquote passed, you know. And we know how she was brought back, you know. We got all of those key parts. Unfortunately, yeah, like you said, it's a little bit more strange because of the fact that like at least me, I would have assumed that I probably would have remembered more about like what my friend who passed away, you know, said, especially in a situation like that.
Well,
Well-
that's my thing. I think she may be either leaving it out or purposefully forgetting.
That
That's
is
what I was gonna
also-
say. Because I mean, if you think about it, like, first of all, so dark. The fact that her friend's dad shot him while he was sleeping,
yeah,
and then killed himself. Clearly, the dad was going through something himself for him to do something so heinous. But
yeah,
but then obviously for her to take it so bad, to obviously become a heroin addict and then to basically OD. So she was, I would imagine, clinically dead.
yeah. Especially being brought back by Narcan, like
Right.
that's like a pretty
Yeah. Well,
That's
I mean,
essentially like getting like one of those big old
adrenaline needles,
like adrenaline
right.
shots to like bring you back
Right.
type of
Wow.
thing.
But
like,
but for the fact that, because again, from the accounts that we're recording in a way, she was in a warm. Again, I was a place,
presence, like a
Right.
presence of something,
you know, and then
know?
she was met by a friendly face,
right,
which in a lot of cases, grandmother, grandfather, a relative or
daughter,
friend,
her friend.
yeah.
right? So she was clinically dead. It's just mind-boggling of how dramatically this just went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, a lot of the NDE like experiences, like a lot of people, they're forever changed like from the time it happens, and it really doesn't sound like that happened for her. I mean, she said it took her
It took a
another
full
year to
year.
get off drugs and like all that kind of stuff, and you know, unfortunately she had another tragedy, you know, losing a baby. I mean, oh god, I couldn't even imagine like going through something like that in general, but I guess it did really change her in a way, like knowing like, you know, she could have peace with something so tragic like happening, which would lead me to believe like maybe that conversation she did have with her friend Justin like really was a good one.
For her
to feel
take-
that way, to feel like, hey, like there's an eternal peace that's waiting my
Yeah.
child, you know, and that my friend is gonna be there and
I agree.
can guide them as well, you know. So yeah, this one's a little bit hard. I mean, it's very raw. It's a very raw story. And the reason why I was like okay with bringing these ones up is like if it's on Quora, everyone can see it. It's a forum, you know, page where anyone can look at it, anyone can see it. It's not really
As
hidden
always,
or secret,
though,
but
if any of you hear these stories and you realize that they are your stories, and
please let us know.
Please let us know,
Yeah.
and we would love to talk to you about it and like literally get to know more information.
Even if you don't want to be on the podcast, but if you just want to
yeah,
say more of your story like to people who are gonna listen, you know, like at the end of the day, like we're just here to learn, you know, we're here to learn more about a topic that interests us, and like, you know, yeah, we can sit here with currently right now alien sunglasses and
What?
you know, we are
what the?
no, but you know, we make a big joke out of here on the Woodsmen, but at the end of the day, like we actually really care.
No, it's true.
To learn more about these stories, learn
We've
more
said
about
it from the very
people, and-
beginning of the podcast in some very early episodes is that our goal is to learn and to like, you know, expand our knowledge of a lot of things. That's why we've not grounded ourselves to one topic alone
Yeah.
on this, or one theme. Like the only theme you're getting here is like, I guess, bears and wolves so
yeah,
far.
and we don't even
like,
talk about them. So.
Yeah, the other than that, like our goal here is to take something that we either are interested in or something we know nothing about and learn about it. Because unlike in high school, learning is actually fun now.
Yeah, because we get to choose like what we're actually learning about.
Yeah.
You know, That's part of like why I think college is so cool too. I know people could probably be like, what do you mean? But being able to go to college, being able to choose any class you want to be in, being able to choose whatever topic you want to like learn about and everything, like
Yeah.
it's pretty nice. You know, it's pretty nice. But yeah, no, we're always open to learning more and learning more about people. Like that's why we would love to interview people on like a topic like this, because as people who have never been close to death, we don't really have any information on like what this actually does to a person, and like, you know, how you're changed, you know, forever when it comes to something like this. So all we can really do is just find stories like these and just try and reflect on them. That's about all we can do as people. So yeah, if you have any stories, questions, comments, or concerns, you can always email us at thewoodsmanpod@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram, thewoodsmanpod. Or Woodsmen Pod. My bad, guys. Eventually I'll get the @, right. But yeah, Woodsmen Pod.
If he gets it wrong now, just wait a little while. It'll be in the credits.
Yeah, it'll be in the credits, guys. Don't worry. You'll get the actual information. But yeah, let's dive in. Let's reflect a little bit on on all of these and go from there, bro.
Well, this was our first part 2 of The Woodsman.
I think this part lasted longer than the first one.
Probably. It probably will. We'll see how editing goes. It's going to be a nightmare. But
check out Dreams and Nightmares season 2.
But overall, I think it was a very, very enlightening topic to discuss for 2 episodes. And I hope Chad enjoyed it too. I mean, these were some insane stories. I mean, some of them funny, some of them just chaotic, some of them very, like, eye-opening.
Just sad.
You know? Yeah.
It's just sad to think about.
Tearjerkers, bro.
Yeah.
Like, but I think it was fun. I think, did you have a favorite moment talking about all these NDEs or anything?
I mean, the amount of times we had to record some of the stories, that was pretty great.
That was fun. Yeah. What do you mean? We do everything here at the Woodsmen Podcast on our first take.
First take, first try, first run through.
Professional.
Definitely
podcasters.
don't even like look at the cuts if you're watching the pod, but you know. No, but I definitely Kiki's story is probably my favorite.
This is the one with the mom and the brain dead,
the grandmother. Psychic. Yeah, there's just so many things involved with that one. I think that's like a perfect like example of like what a trope of an NDE is. You know,
Yeah,
like there's just
true.
so much going on with that one, and I would love to just get all the information on that story. I'd love to maybe like even rewrite it, make a little short story out of it or something. It's just such a crazy, you know, experience. I just couldn't even imagine, especially like 10 months after your near-death experience, to have someone just random come up to you at a bar and drop some knowledge on you, and you're just like, what is this?
I still think that my favorite partially still goes to the woman and the pen.
That one's wild.
It's just that moment at the end where the doctor is shocked because she's blind, where you just like it's one of those moments where you read a good book and you're like, oh my god, I can't. And it, like the
twist, like that twist.
I love twists. I've always loved twists in movies and stuff. And even though I knew the twist at the beginning because the title of the story was,
well, first of all, it was really well written. Like whoever actually wrote that up, like, was a pretty good writer, because it was one of those like once we started going to the actual story part of it, I completely forgot.
You just
she was
forget.
blind.
You just forget, and it's super cool. And yeah, I also wanted to ask, because in our notes here, at least last week, we had this included until we decided to make this into a part 2. You also kind of threw in A Christmas Carol. Could you maybe let me know or let chat know why you wanted to bring that up?
No, I'll just let you guys figure it out.
Well, we've been your hosts.
I shout out again. I definitely just a big shout out in general to Astonishing Legends, bro. They, at least research wise, definitely they're so extensive on their research that I was definitely able to find a lot of these links to like certain like things, and definitely The Link to Life After Life by Raymond Moody. Definitely found that from their episode on near-death experiences, way more in depth than ours was, way more analytical. We could never be them.
One day.
With our turnaround time, we could never be them.
One day.
Okay, then I guess we'll have to start taking
I said one day. I
episodes
did not say
every
now.
2 weeks, instead of a 1 week turnaround, because their research is just so extensive.
Maybe we'll
but
never
no, but they had the screenwriter of the Mothman Prophecies on, Rich Haddam, and he brought a lot to the table. But one of the things he brought up was the Christmas Carol, and I had never really thought about that before until listening to their episode, where it's like, dude, Scrooge went through an entire near-death experience. The whole book is a near-death experience. I mean, when you really think about it, it was one of those, like, maybe he didn't go through anything where, like, he was close to death, but, like, think of the tropes. He had a full life review. I mean, his past, his present, his future.
He probably went
outcome.
through a couple tunnels.
He probably, I mean, in the movies, he did travel through a lot. He had a spirit guide in every single part that took him through, like, where he was at, what he was doing, all this stuff. I would say it's almost like a vertical life review. I mean, he was sitting there, was able to see everything that was happening. He had no control over seeing it, but he was there, and almost had that, like, 5-story view where you're kind of like looking up at, like, everything kind of happening to you, and the things that of the past, and the things of what's to come, and, like, the present in general. He went through it in a very short amount of time. I mean, he came back, he went through that whole thing, and it was one singular night. And then it 100% changed him from the better for the rest of his life. I mean, the book really ends with him talking about, like, I kept the spirit of Christmas in my heart every single day until the day I died. He was also visited by Jacob Marley, someone who
that's
already
true.
passed,
People
someone
who are
who was
close
in,
to you, familiar or friends.
and he was the original one that told him, like, hey, if you don't change, like, you're gonna be cursed, or roam around with your baggage forever, and
It's definitely some food for thought. I haven't thought of it like that before. Sometimes I do like to think that it was truly what Scrooge said it was, and it was some bad stew or whatever. What was it?
some indigestive beef. Or
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like
And he
that.
just had a really bad.
Maybe it was like poison food or whatever,
Yeah.
and bro was on the brink of death or something.
That, or he's
like,
a lot like me, and he just almost choked to
had
death
some
on
crazy
his sleep
heartburn.
apnea.
No, but I mean, it is really crazy to think about. I won't go, like, crazy in depth with it, but I will leave, like, with this, because I think it's really powerful. There are always going to be people who are going to laugh and, like, call you crazy when you go through something like this. We see it today very well. People have their crazy. It doesn't even have to be NDEs. People are contacted by
Bigfoot.
aliens, or they see Bigfoot, or they go through some, like, crazy traumatic event that doesn't make sense to anyone else. People just laugh at you and call you crazy. They won't listen to you. They won't listen to the story. They don't listen to the evidence, whatever evidence there is, if there's any. But Scrooge didn't care. And, it's a lot like other people, they go through something that's really true and dear to them. He didn't care what happened. And he didn't really care because he knew what happened to him really did happen. And he was going to choose to live his life the way he ought to live it, due to that experience. And, for people who don't really understand, and they have really negative thoughts about their experiences, sometimes you just have to kind of sit back and ask yourself, like, why do you feel that way? Listening to someone's experience doesn't threaten, like, your worldview or your belief. And if it does, then maybe that's a good thing. Sometimes we do need something to really sit there and have you question, because it's always good to question, like, what's happening, like, within the world. You don't have to believe it. No one's asking you to believe it, but sometimes you just have to listen. You have to just be thankful for the experience, whether or not it happened to you or
Yeah.
someone else you knew or someone you don't know that's a complete stranger. I'm sure some of those stories, like with Kiki, I'm pretty sure if a psychic really did come up to her and knew this about her grandma and all this kind of stuff, I mean, I'm pretty sure she's thankful, even though she didn't know Kiki, that she was alive.
Mm-hmm.
And it because she knew what happened to her, the experience. So anytime you ever hear any stories like this, you don't have to really believe in it. You don't have to believe that there's any higher power, if there's life after death, or if NDEs are real in general.
Yeah.
But, it's our jobs as people to respect that and to respect people and their stories and what they believe in. Because how are you ever going to get someone else to respect your beliefs if you can't respect theirs?
That's fair.
So that's all I got. That's all I got.
No, it was good, and it is a good thing to leave off and have chat think about. And we do want to also leave chat with another question, like always, starting our normal what would you call it? Not habit, tradition.
Yeah.
Tradition on the Woodsmen Podcast. Today we're asking you, chat, what's the closest you have ever come to biting the bullet? If there is a great story, like if you've ever come as close as any of the stories you've heard today, or even closer than that, let us know. As always, as we've mentioned many a time, you can email us or comment or leave us your concerns at our Gmail. It's just thewoodsmanpod at gmail.com. But yeah, it's that's your question for the week. Please, for the love of God, start answering our questions. We want to hear from you, chat.
Yeah. Drop it even as a comment, under any of the Instagram videos or TikTok. I don't mean to brag, but I think I've been doing all right at posting.
Doing pretty good.
I've been posting at least 3 to 4 times a week now. So hopefully
Woodsman Pod
you guys
on
love
Insta.
it. Yeah, Woodsman
Go check
Pod,
that out.
Instagram. Like, follow, subscribe. You can also follow us at all of our personal socials as well, and that would be pretty cool. We definitely answer I answer my DMs. I don't know about my
DMs
boy
if people would
Bearfax
DM me.
Joseph.
No one DMs me.
But yeah, no, we're always active. We're always wanting to hear some crazy, creepy, cool stuff. So,
But speaking of crazy and creepy, we're not done yet. The spooky season has just begun.
This is just technically the first episode.
Yes.
When you think about it. 2 parts. One
parts.
So we got some more spooky stuff coming up your way. We actually know what we're talking about next week, but we're not going to tell you. So
All right.
So yeah, I hope you guys like it. And
we've been your hosts, Joey Rucker
and Brent Murphy. Later, Gators. The Woodsmen Podcast is actively reading and responding to everything and anything on Instagram and our email. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the show, or would like to possibly be on the show, you can email us at thewoodsmanpod@gmail.com. Make sure to keep up with all things Woodsman related on Instagram as well, at WoodsmanPod. Don't forget to rate, like, and subscribe to the Woodsmen Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, with video exclusively on YouTube and Patreon. Make sure to follow our personal accounts at Strange Kids and Pie Master J on all platforms.
The Woodsman Podcast is co-produced by Brent Murphy and Joey Rucker.
Our technical producer and engineer is Eric Bessero at Elite Sound Studios, with additional engineering by Brent Murphy.
Video editing by Joey Rucker, and blood, sweat, and tears by all of us.
Any additional content by the Woodsman Podcast may not be used without our permission. Copyright Cabin 13 Productions. And remember,
If you see a bright light, stop staring at the sun.
crikey, mate.
Crikey. Including traveling through walls to the waiting room. Okay.
Yeah, that's one sentence. Where I was the chairman of the psychiatrist. Oh my God, dude, again.
Wearing mismatched plaids.
Plaids.
Why is it spelled plaids?
Because that's how plaid is spelled.
It's a stupid way to spell plaid.
she was out of body. Oh, dude.
You were doing something good.
You're a very interesting looking scientist.
I am vengeance. That's what I am. How many times are you gonna clear your throat?
You look like a
Switch over to me.
Spider-Man Batman combination.
Yes. Keep it.
It's. I'm trying to hold it in. It's really hard, but I'll do it.
I just makes me so mad. You can do it so well.
One of these days, I will do an entire episode.
If you wouldn't know
Just
any
like this.
better, you would.
You
think-
would not know.
Yeah,
I would
you
not
would
know
think,
that
like,
you
you
were
were Australian.
just some
Are you
pudgy
from
American.
Australia?
I am. Thank you for noticing, mate.